Welcome to the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast. Salt Strong has been helping saltwater anglers catch more fish in less time for 10 years and is now the largest and most trusted saltwater fishing community in America. If you want to catch more saltwater fish, then keep listening. If you want to speed up your fish catching results even faster, then join the private insider community at saltstrong.com. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds.
Hey, and Luke Simons.
Look, I was talking about fishing etiquette here in 2025. You know, things haven't really changed that much, but it seems like we got to keep talking about this topic of fishing etiquette, because even though things haven't changed, etiquette hasn't changed as far as I know. There are a lot more people boating, a lot more people fishing. There's a lot more inconsiderate people, and I see this pop up in our community. I see it pop up in Facebook over and over and over again. And there was two already this year, pretty blatant ones that our members were involved on the innocent side of things, where they were saying, hey, here's what happened to me. Like, what would you guys do in this situation? And I'm just like shaking my head. Like, one was where a guy is fishing a shoreline, and I'm talking, he's fishing tight. And another boat goes in between him and the shoreline, like runs over his line, and came out, it wasn't like just came out of a canal or a creek mouth or a ramp area. It was literally like almost like intentionally. And he's like, dude, what in the world? I mean, I would have been livid if someone did. It just didn't make any sense, and didn't even acknowledge, no, like, wave, I'm sorry, just blasted through, and he had to reel in as quick as he could to get his line. He probably should just maybe let it eat up in the prop and a little braid in there. But I don't know, it's just crazy. That's not etiquette either, so I apologize for saying that, but it's just crazy. So yeah, Luke and I just want to get on, and we did one of these, and I realize it's now been like 5 years since we've done a fishing etiquette podcast. So it's been a long time. So it's due time. In fact, I saw two pretty bad ones here that were posted in 2025 already. It's time to talk about the right and the wrong thing to do. So Luke, what do you got? You got some good stories?
Yeah, I mean, there's countless stories. I feel like whether it's the boat ramp or just fishing in general, and I think we'll start with just fishing. I think a question that comes up all the time. So I love dock fishing. Yeah, for the last 4 years, I'm not living there now, but the last 4 years I was living in St. Petersburg, and it's just heavily developed. There's a lot of pressure, and so dock fishing was really the method of fishing that I really relied on to catch a lot of fish, even especially on weekends. Not as many people are comfortable fishing docks, so those fish are comfortable, at least as comfortable as possible. And not many people are able to skip lures up under docks, so those who can catch a bunch of fish. But if you're going to do this type of fishing, just the etiquette part is only cast at a dock as if it's your dock. Meaning, if there's a boat up on a lift and you're not comfortable like skipping underneath it, then don't do it. If you wouldn't skip under your own boat, then don't skip under somebody else's, because obviously if you're using any sort of jigs or lure with a weight on it, it could damage the boat, and that's really the number one reason why there's a lot of I think, what is the term, the Karen, or the Karen who comes out of the dock and yells at people fishing. It's usually because of, and granted they shouldn't be doing that either, but also there are a lot of fishermen that are not quite good at casting enough to actually fish docks without hurting property. So long story short, treat every dock and even every person as if it's your own dock or your own family member out on the water, and life becomes much easier.
All right, so let's stick with docks. Scenario: you are a good caster, but you get a little aggressive and you get up on their dock and it gets snagged. What's the etiquette there?
I don't know. I mean, legally, you're not allowed. You can go under docks, right? The dock is the owner's property. Under the dock, the water is not. So So basically, to be within law, you cannot get on the dock. So hopefully, again, if your cast is so bad that you can't just get a rod, a 7-foot rod, and get it out of the obstruction. In many cases, maybe it might skip too far. There's like a pipe or something in the water that you didn't see. Usually, especially use weedless lures as well. I forgot to mention that. That's a big reason why we just came out with the weedless round eye jig heads. It's basically a way to have a good jig head that skips nice and is weedless. So as long as you're using a weedless jig head, it's very rare that you have to get that you'll break off, because it's usually going to be wedged like under a rock or something. So all you need to do is just get the line on the opposite side. So put your rod under the dock, lift up, and the lure will come out like 90+% of the time. So what you can't do is get up on somebody else's dock. That's definitely not going to be a legal thing to do, nor an appropriate thing to do. Obviously, if somebody's outside, the common etiquette is, and you're fishing in their backyard, common etiquette is just skip that dock and go on to the next one, right? Homeowners, granted, they don't own the water, but it's customized, basically one of the common courtesy things is don't actively fish a dock when somebody's either on the dock or even in their backyard. If they're outside, I just skip it, go on to the next one. There's usually going to be a ton of different docks to fish, and skipping one is not gonna ruin a day.
Yep. Yeah. I live on the lake, as you know, and I've seen multiple times because I work from home mostly, and I watch out there, and I've seen multiple times that people get on the dock to go get a lure, and I've gained a couple lures as well over the years that have been hooked on all kinds of things, from the boat to the Salt Strong flag to one of the inner boards in the dock. And I'm sure there's a bunch down at that little underwater light I have. That's another one, just something to get you stuck. So, okay, that's good. So, another one that came up on here was wade fishing. That's a little bit unique one, right? So you walk up to an area, maybe you planned all week and you're going to go out wade fishing, and it's a tight area and there's already someone there. What do you do?
Yeah, that's a tough one as well. And in general, first come, first serve. And if you're, if I usually just go to a different spot. But I guess the wrong thing to do, the way you're going to upset somebody, is if they're clearly wading down a bank and then you play, not Frogger, hopscotch or whatever, where you just walk up and go in front of them in the direction they're going. That'll upset somebody. And technically, like I get upset when that happens to me. It happens, right? People do it. But just to not make the situation even worse, just don't do that, right? Somebody's clearly going a certain direction. In my mind, they have that. I'll fish behind them. Again, most people, aren't covering every bit of water. So fishing behind somebody actually is pretty effective. Just like you're in a boat, right? The person in the back of the boat does catch a good amount of fish, even though the person in the front has first dibs at them in most cases. So I either go to a different spot, number one, if there's a lot of people out there, or if the person is pretty far away, I'll just fish behind them and pick off the remaining fish that haven't been caught or spooked.
And this applies to wade fishing in a boat, etc., right? Anytime that you're coming up on an area that you plan on fishing and you see someone else, regardless of boat, kayak, or wading boots, to your point, Luke, watch which way they're going. They're if you sit there long enough, and usually it doesn't take that long, you're going to see that if they're on a trolling motor, they're going to be moving. In a kayak, the winds or current's taking them. If they're wade fishing, they're going to be walking. And you go, okay, cool. They're going that way. I'm not going to go try to jump in front of them. I'm going to, like you said, leave or go the opposite way. If it happened to be, a mangrove line or a bank or oyster bar or whatever, just go the opposite way.
And I'll say too, if you're in a boat and they're wading, I always give the wade fishermen priority, right? Because they spend a lot more effort getting to the spot than we did. So basically, if there's a tie, or if there's any close to a tie on who should have the claim to the water, it's really whoever had the hardest time getting there is kind of the like I say, the polite thing to do.
Yep.
And
let's talk about piers, jetties, bridges, the inlets and the passes. Usually there's some current there if you're fishing. And usually the experienced people are going to be kind of fishing, almost like drifting, right? Where everyone's kind of going at the same speed. Do not be that person, especially if you're new and you're coming out to a place where you have experienced people that just goes out there and whips out one when everyone else is drifting all together. Ask questions. I mean, even a lot of these peers, you think they're intimidating because you've seen people getting in fights on YouTube or whatever. For the most part, they're really nice people up there that really, and they want you doing the right things so you're not screwing them up. Like, they actually will help you out and be like, no, let me show you. Here's the right way to do it. The last thing they want is someone coming in there and messing up the entire thing, getting braided line wrapped around everyone else. It is an absolute hot mess. And same goes for boats, right? If you're drifting, I mean, if you ever go to like Boca Grande in the summertime, you'll see it's this massive glob of boats. I mean, it could be 50 of them, 100 of them sometimes, and they're all going to the exact same little drift. All together. You do not be the person that you will probably get some lead whipped out at you if you come in there and be the person who's going the opposite way or got your trolling motor on and you're going through them all. It is without having a fish on. That is a good way to get a lot of enemies.
Yeah, and yeah, just pay attention to details when you're fishing high congestion areas. Those are generally the spots where there are altercations, and a lot of it does come down to details. And I have stories on both those, like fishing like a high population or at least a high traffic zone like Sebastian Inlet. I used to do that a lot. And yeah, those who are on the pier, they're when the snook bite is good and outgoing tide, is get some live shrimp and get a lightweight and just walk down the pier with the shrimp. If everybody's doing that, everybody's going to catch a bunch of fish. It's awesome. But when one person bucks the trend and they throw a pyramid sinker and stop and block everybody, that's when people start getting mad. And on the boat side too, I used to do a lot of night fishing out there, and sometimes the trolling plugs would be the ticket. And if everybody's trolling, everybody's catching fish. It's awesome. And then there's one person that's doing a light bait drift through the section where the plugs are working, and it just wrecks everything. So long story short, don't buck the trend. I even have a story on Boca Grande. This I was probably like 16, like just starting to get out, and just probably was a little bit of a punk kid, and went out to Boca Grande like thinking we were going to go catch a tarpon, and we caught some good bait, and the strongest rod we had just had 20-pound mono on it. It was a bait cast setup. And we're drifting through Boca Grande Pass. We were following everybody. Like we were doing a proper drift. We had the good bait, but our gear was not ready for tarpon. It was not ready to catch tarpon amongst a bunch of people. We hook up and we couldn't control our tarpon. Both were yelling at us. At that point, I was mad at them for being mad at us. But hindsight, I just didn't have the proper equipment to successfully handle the fish that I was likely to hook into. And once we hooked up, our fish was jumping, and there were like 3 boats in between us and our fish, and it was just chaos, and we caused it, right? So like now that I realize what we did wrong, I feel bad for being mad at everybody else. But all the issue would have been fixed had we just gone there, either gone there with the right gear, or when we realized we didn't have the right gear, we should have left, or at least fished on the outside edge versus right in the middle of everybody and hooking up to a big fish. So a lot of it's on us, and a lot of it's just about just paying attention to the details on what others are doing, and don't buck the trend unless you really know what you're doing.
Yeah. The awareness part is huge. And I've had times, speaking of Boca Grande, it's reminded me of time I was down there. We're with the kids and we're going to watch the sunset, and a great time to fish, especially in the summer for some snook. And I'm fishing, and a person comes right next to me, and this Boca Grande 7-8 miles. And person literally, and I don't know this person. They're not even talking to me. They're just, I'm like, what are you doing? So I'm like, took the high road. I was like, hey, I'll go find a new area. Just bizarre. Like, to your point, awareness. Why, if you saw someone who was already there, why would you go right next to them within 5 feet and just start and it's bizarro? And that applies to wade fishing, really any kind of fishing. If you're in a boat, there are some times in a boat, like Boca Grande as an example, where boats do get close. But once again, that's awareness, right? You go there and you see, oh, other people are doing this, and it's just kind of normal. But in general, like, let's just say you were fishing a flat that was decent size and there's a boat on it. How close is too close?
just on the flat that's like off the beaten path. Yeah, I mean,
Big flat.
I would say a par five golf course, like 500 yards. I go way, like it's not it's there's in the areas like that. There's usually a lot of open water, and so why get close? So if you can, yeah, yeah, my thing would be a par five.
Okay, that's cool. That's good. Okay, par five. That's good. What about name a type of structure that might be different? I mean, um,
So
let's
thinking about Boca Grande, like Boca Grande is we go down there a lot. It's like the Phosphate Docks or something like that, where it's a deep water zone that's a high traffic, but you can only access it by boat. In that instance, that it's just kind of commonplace to pull up pretty close to other boats. So most people are bottom fishing in that case. It really depends on the type of fishing. Bottom fishing, you're straight down. Nobody's casting. So in situations like that, like even like a casting distance away would be kind of the norm. But when you're fishing deep structure is very different than the shallow flats. Shallow flats, the fish are very spooky. We have to be quiet, and we can spook fish from long distances. When they're down 50 feet, 30, 50 feet, holding the structure, a boat kind of pulling in isn't really going to do much damage or cause much harm, I should say.
Yeah, that's a good point. What about when you're anchored? Let's talk about that too. And this goes not just for going up and fishing near them, but waking them, right? I mean, you can cause some serious damage if, especially if like a no wake zone, and you go there and someone's anchored near a bridge or whatever, and you just go there and swamp them, and they're anchored. Ever have any issues there?
Not really. I mean, again, a lot of the anchoring is going to be out on reefs or something a little bit. If you're just don't anchor in a channel, obviously boats are going to buzz right by you, and that's your fault. Like you obviously can't be blocking a main channel, especially under a bridge. The same point. But if you're just anchored down, just in between some, or near some of the bridge pylons, away from the main, the main channel, you should be in good shape. And again, just don't just plop the anchor down right next to somebody else. It's not like lobster season. A lot of it's situational, right? Like you go down to mini season, down to the Keys. We do a lot of lobstering around bridges. And when there's a lot of people there, it gets congested, and there's going to be people that are anchoring within 50 feet or 100 feet of each other. When it's busy and everybody's aware that there's a lot of action going on, that's okay. But if there's a 2-mile bridge and you see a boat and you get like 50 feet from them and there's nobody else anywhere around, like it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of weird. But as far as what the actual etiquette is, I don't really know. I personally just stick to try to get as far away as possible and especially, kind of follow the norm. Every area is different. Like I spent some time I had a work assignment back in the corporate days up in Rochester, New York. And so I drove up to one of the rivers that was dumping into the lake going after salmon. I heard there's a salmon run, and sure enough there was, and it was amazing. And there you're like shoulder to shoulder, like there's just people up and down the entire river. The salmon are going crazy in there. And if you just found like an open 4 feet where you can, like, your shoulders aren't hitting the next person, it's fair game. And that's just normal. I would never fish that close to anybody in Florida. That's just not normal. So a lot of it's just follow the norms, and you won't get into trouble. And when you buck the system, that's typically when problems arise.
Yeah, you mentioned channels. Definitely don't anchor in channels, and don't even fish a channel in anywhere and expect people to always slow down for you. At some point, that's on you. And we had one last time we were with Hollywood. Late last year, we were going down to the Everglades Flamingo area, and there's only one channel, from Isla Mirada all the way to Flamingo. There's just one channel, and it's marked. And there was these guys fishing in it, and I mean, there's room for 2 boats maybe, but they were blocking the whole thing, and Hollywood handled it well. He had to slow down, and it's to the point it's tough for you to even get back on the plane. So it's not the other boat's fault. You just don't fish the main channel, especially if it's that small. and definitely don't anchor in there, because imagine, like, I just think of Tampa and the wakes that some of those massive liners are putting out, and if you were anchored, I mean, dude, you could submerge the whole boat if you hit wrong. So I would not do that, because someone did mention that part about anchoring, and that's a tough one. I mean, it's also the beauty of these new trolling motors with spot lock and the ability to kind of have you anchored there without having to actually drop a line and worry about that. So, let's talk about no wake zones, because that came up quite a bit. In front of people's houses. I mean, I even noticed it there at the Gasparilla Marina. Obviously it's a no wake zone it's very well marked. And, I think some people have a different interpretation of what a wake is. And I see it here in the chain of lakes in Winter Haven. We passed someone this past weekend, these young 16-year-old, kids. And I'm sure we're the same way. We're always in a rush. And, our idea of wake was not flying, and theirs was, going at a couple thousand RPM. So what are your thoughts on that, or had any bad experiences?
Oh yeah, the one bad experience when we lost our camera. We were doing a podcast video, Joe and I live, and our videographer couldn't make it, so we just put the tripod on the back of my boat, and we were fishing under a bridge in St. Pete, and it was 100% in the no wake zone, or a slow speed zone. There's difference between no wake and slow speed, but anyhow, he was definitely not going slow speed. He was kicking off a pretty good wake, and he was a pretty good distance off. So I didn't really put two and two together. And then all of a sudden the boat starts rocking, and I heard Joe go, "Oh my gosh!" And he like literally like dove and caught one of the tripod legs, but the camera was already in the water. So it was like a $4,000 or $5,000 camera that was obviously ruined. So yeah, just pay attention, pay attention to the signs. Idle speed is like a legit idle speed, like the slowest speed you can go. And then the slow speed areas, you can go a little bit faster than idle, but you shouldn't be going fast enough where the bow starts rising. When that bow starts rising, now you're digging that butt down, and you're going to make a bigger wake than you would if we were going at full speed. Even like I do a lot of paddleboard fishing, and just again, a thing of there are people actually trying to do good that do harm, where when they see a kayaker paddleboarder, they'll actually be on a plane and then they'll slow down, and that slowing down digs that boat down to make a bigger wake than if you just buzz right by. So if you are going to slow down for a kayaker or paddleboarder, do it like way ahead of them, so that big wake that is created as you slow down doesn't smack them. In many instances, the person trying to do good for the kayaker ends up swamping them, where it'd have been better just to buzz right or slow down way sooner.
Yeah. No, you're right on that one. Let's talk about that in terms of not necessarily paddleboarders and kayaks. I'm going to assume that those people are fishing and not causing a ton of harm. But in that same vicinity, we got wave runners and the sea-doos, right? And a lot of them just don't seem to get it. And I see it out here in freshwater. I see it in saltwater. It is rampant. And heck, I mean, down to the Keys, it's one reason that they have kind of eliminated a lot of the public boat ramps in the Keys. There's very few left, because all these people were coming from Hialeah and other places, and bringing their wave runners and camping there for 5 nights straight and trashing the place, leaving all their trash and tearing up stuff in their wave runners, and just no respect for anyone. So if you have a wave runner, they're great. I mean, we had one growing up. I mean, it could be a lot of fun, but once again, awareness and respecting people who are fishing a shoreline. You don't go by and try to buzz them, and especially these new ones going 70 miles an hour. And we've seen them out in the flats and stuff. People are just flying by, and obviously in no wake zones as well. People we're like, what is going on here? So I don't imagine we have a ton of those wave runner people listening. So I feel like I'm talking to deaf ears at this point, but has to be brought up because we all get frustrated by jet skis and wave runners.
Yeah, those are, I wish those drivers were listening, I doubt they are, but just for us too, we just need to be careful. Those generally are the highest risk of doing something really stupid, and we just need to just keep an eye out and make sure we don't have a collision or whatever. I think I told the story on one of the last ones, but yeah, I was fishing a no combustion engine zone. So I was on trolling motor with my now wife and my dog on the front of the boat. We're actively fishing down along this island. And it was wave runners were coming down, and I was like, "What's going on?" The one of them buzzed. The guy buzzed like literally 15 feet from the boat, and like right in front of us, and it was the direction that we were casting. So fortunately, we both had reeler lines up, like kind of thinking, "What's this guy doing?" And I gave him I was just did like what's going on, and he looked at me as if like he was wondering why I looked upset. And then his wife or girlfriend or whatever was behind him, and she buzzed on the other side, like 15 feet away, like literally, like I could have caught them in a cast net. It was that close, and it's just you just never know. So yeah, when you do see one of them come up, just get your lines out of the way and just try not to let them do any harm to your stuff. But yeah, unfortunately, that's just an issue that I don't know how to resolve as far as just total idiot drivers. Not all of them are bad drivers, obviously, but it seems like the most obnoxious stories involve wave runner or Sea-Doo.
Yes, and the moral of all the story is situational awareness. Look at what else is happening around you, because there are going to be times where it's different. You get a couple good stories in there where it is okay to be close because everyone else is close and it's just what's expected. So that's number one. Number two is, I think, take the high road, right? Every time you can. Getting in a fight about it doesn't really help anyone. I do think if there's a way to educate someone, like I saw Hollywood do, those guys didn't know that they were doing something dumb. And he slowed down and said, "Hey, guys, here's why. Because look how shallow it is. I can't even get back on a plane now because of you guys, and I obviously don't want to hit you. That's why we don't fish in channels." Like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry." He was not being a jerk. He was real nice, and I think that's if that opportunity arises, great, do it, because there are a lot of newer anglers that just don't know. I mean, your story in Boca Grande is a good one. I'm sure there's many more where we just didn't even know we were doing anything dumb or out of etiquette, if you will. So I think taking the high road's a good one, and there's a lot of water out there to fish. None of us do own the spots. Be courteous around people's property, and do note that there are some instances where people do own that land. Now, to your point, they still don't own the water, but we had one even recently on our trip just a couple weeks ago. We actually saw a guy out in his dock, and we ended up having a nice little quick conversation with him. I think he respected the fact that we went around and didn't fish his dock. And then I happened to look. I was like, "Oh, holy smokes! He actually owns all that land out there." So a lot of sand had shifted, I guess, over the years, and they legally, per the property appraiser, own past that dock, that land. Most people don't. Most people, it ends at the shoreline. So that's on our app too. That's Smart Fishing Spots. I was talking to a captain actually today, and he didn't know we had that. He's like, "Dude, I pay $100 just for that feature alone on a different app." He's into hunting, and I was like, "Well, you can cancel it now. You got Smart Fishing Spots." So we do have that layer. Here it is. Luke's holding it up. If you're listening, it's the public land layer. I'm sorry, it's the private land. Public land is showing all the public spots. The private land shows every single parcel of property, Texas, Florida, the Carolinas, and all the states in between. Who owns it, how big it is, shows the actual property line. Really, really helpful. So that's all part of Smart Fishing Spots.
Yeah. So if you are a wade fisherman too, I don't know the exact laws as far as wading. I know that landowners can't own the water, but the ones who own the land under the water, I'm not sure if they would have the legal I guess upper edge, if you will, like a legal standing to tell you to get off their property if you're wading in the water on land that happens to be within their actual ownership. So yeah, if any wade fisherman, for that, just to know for sure if you're on somebody's land or not, make sure to, again, use this layer, the public and private lands. You'll be able to see exactly where all the ownership is, and that way you'll know exactly if you have standing or not when you're out there in the water. Because again, I've had multiple issues where I'm fishing people's docks or whatever, and they're saying, "Hey, get away, we can't fish that." And like, hey, like you don't own the water. But in some instances, they do on the land, and if you're waiting on it, I'm not sure what the actual legal rules are for that.
I don't either.
It only takes like 5 seconds to check. So
yeah,
make sure to check.
Yep. Cool. Well, we'd love to hear any stories you guys have. We'll put this in the blog, as always, at saltstrong.com in the fishing tips section. And at the very bottom, you'll see a place you can put a comment, maybe leave your craziest stories, maybe that you were a part of, good, bad, and different. We all can use them as learning experiences. So we'd love to hear your feedback on any crazy etiquette stories that you've had over the years. Leave them in the comments. Come join us in the Salt Strong Insider Club if you haven't already. Got a lot of big things happening here in 2025. And speaking of smart fishing spots, one thing we asked the members at the end of last year, what if you could only have one more new layer in the app, what would it be? And you remember what it was, don't you, Luke? So water temp was like by far what people said. So because we have almost everything, right? We have the 1/2-foot contour lines now. That's all proprietary to us. Oysters and seagrass and the 3D underwater. That's like that sonar view. So you can actually see the potholes and kind of see exactly what's underwater. You got the 4K satellite. We got smart fishing spots or the smart spots. And people are like, man, it'd be really cool if we had water temperature. So we have hired a global expert on getting real-time water temp, like daily water temps. And it's pretty cool. We've, just seen some of the samples that we've been getting so far in different places, and it's I think mostly all accurate. Obviously it's temperature, so it's going to vary, on the depth. These are more averages. But man, it is very, very helpful for those that you just love knowing what the water temp is. Personally, Luke and I, yes, we still like to know. Obviously, it changes things, but it's all relative, right? If it's cold out, you're looking for the warmer areas and in relativity to everything else, and vice versa. If it's boiling hot, you're not going to be fishing a super shallow water in the middle of the day when there's no oxygen there. You're going to be looking for cooler areas. So, but in general, it's really helpful to kind of have an idea of what the general water temp is. So.
Yeah, so you can even zoom in because it's there's other water temp things, but it's like you zoom in into like a bay like Tampa Bay, and it's just not detailed enough to actually like show the differences throughout the bay. This is next level where you can I was looking at a prototype, and you can clearly see the differences from like the bay entrance, the middle of the bay, and then up in the fingers, and it makes more sense now after seeing that on some of the spots that I've been catching a good amount of fish. Because especially winter and summer, that's when that temp is a big deal. And just to know where there's a slight, even a fraction of a degree difference can make a big deal. And that layer is going to be really helpful during those two seasons.
So come get that. It's all part of the membership. Tackle discounts, the app, and the Smart Fishing Tides, an amazing community, all kinds of shortcuts, mini courses. Got a new course going live here soon too. So a lot of good stuff happening. So that's all at saltstrong.com. Appreciate you guys big time, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.
Want more fishing tips, shortcuts, and tools so you can catch more fish per trip? Then head over to saltstrong.com now and join the movement. Tight lines, and thanks for listening.